Hey, this is David Christian from the Modern Martial Artist. Where the hell have I been? I've been working on the videos for the book, and I realized that a lot of people wanted the videos just as much as they wanted the book. I originally was just gonna add it as like a little extra, a little perk, and then I realized from the comments that wow, a lot of people are buying the book, but what they're really excited about is the videos, is seeing their favorite fighters in action and learning about how they put power into their strikes. So, um, I always try to bite off a little bit more than I can chew for a couple reasons. One is that uh, I want to challenge myself, and I want to go just beyond where I feel my limits are, to where I'm like 95, 99% sure I could accomplish something, but just that extra 5% of this is new, this is challenging, um, that kind of thing. But man, I definitely did not realize the amount of time that it would take to both write, finish, to complete the book. Because when I started, I had a very detailed outline. I knew exactly what I was going to say. All the chapters were written out, the first and last sentences of every paragraph, and I had all the examples picked out. And I thought the videos were going to be like half a minute on each person, if that, like little clips or whatever. The videos ended up coming in at half an hour. So um, that's about half an hour of footage that I put out this month, along with the TJ Dillashaw one. But I wanted to make a Cody one too. I didn't really have time for it before the fight, and at the same time, I don't want to risk my luck too much with the UFC. HBO copyrighted me, and then for some reason, without me even asking for it, they gave me the video back. I think they just wanted to allow enough time. So that because I guess people were still ordering the fight, or I don't know what was up with it, but they didn't want that footage out there. But then for some reason, either someone saw it for the first time in like their little automated queue, or what happened is that they were like, okay, we like this video. It's been enough time since the fight. We'll let the guy have his video back and get rid of his copyright strike. Either way, I'm very confident about using boxing footage, that they're gonna respect their free use, especially HBO now. Thanks HBO, I appreciate that. Um, for giving me my video back. I don't know what they're gonna do in the future, but I'm happy about that. UFC, I don't know, because there's a great guy. He still has a channel now. His last name's Dorman. Uh, I think his first name's Brandon, and I actually reached out to him for help a little bit, when I got like a copyright strike on my Facebook. I guess they've deleted his channel like 5 times. So I don't really. He still has a channel, but it should have hundreds of thousands of subscribers. But they keep deleting it, so it has like a couple thousand or something. But look him up. He's really good. Um, but yeah, so I've been doing the videos, and I bit off way more than I can chew. We'll be back to our scheduled programming with at least 3 videos a month now. From now on, probably hopefully a lot more, like 5 to 6, and then podcasts, that kind of thing. So moving on, let's talk about before we talk about GSP versus Bisping, let's talk about TJ versus Cody. Uh, and since I didn't get to make a Cody video, I'm gonna talk a little bit about his style. I definitely might make one in the future, especially if he wins, which he has a very very good chance of doing. But at the same time, apparently he has 2-1 odds or something. I'd rate this pretty even. Even if Cody goes out and knocks him out in the first 10 seconds, I'm never gonna change my mind on that. By the way, because that's just one exchange. Even if it takes him 1 minute or he knocks him out in the first round, I TJ could easily do the first thing to him. Especially because the first thing I want to talk about Cody is that he has the kind of Frankenstein style of head movement, which is just side to side and not much else. Which I'm going to talk about why that works for some fighters, and how it works and how it even helps him out in a little bit here. But it does result in him taking some shots, and if you look at a lot of his fights, he takes a large deal of shots. And there's a reason why they don't do too much damage to him. A big reason is his striking style. Um, Cody comes in with very very tight hooks, and he does come in with them. If his striking style reminds me of Floyd Patterson in the way he keeps his elbow pinned very tight to his side, and the power of his hook comes from the kind of hinge of his shoulder. He's not really turning his elbow over too much. There are a lot of different kinds of ways to throw hook punches, even among different boxers and different boxing gyms. Cody's style is the one where the elbow stays in, and it just kind of, if you want to think about the forearm makes more of a circle rather than the elbow turning over for more follow through. And that kind of creates a little bit more structure. Like if you right now, if you pin your wherever you're sitting or whatever, if you're not going to get any weird looks, if you pin your elbow to your side and swing back and forth, I kind of call it like the T-Rex arms. If you swing your arms back and forth, you'll notice that there's less give. So there's a tighter, solid structure, and you'll notice that you really need flexible shoulders if you want any kind of load up. But if you do have flexible shoulders, then that's a way to get a powerful, very, very tight hook. The other way, of course, is you kind of unpin your elbow a little bit. Not so much that you open yourself a lot, or you can. It really depends on the situation. Everyone always has hard and fast rules. You can make anything work, guys. If you step, like I've had the experience so many times of training at different gyms just kind of casually, and then I go from one gym to another, and then all of a sudden they treat me like a novice because everything they taught me at the last gym was wrong. And this happened like 5, 10, 15 times in my life, just casually training and going to different places. Everyone says they have the answer. So I'm telling you 2 different ways you can hook punch with different benefits. And Cody's way is to keep his elbow very close to his side or his hip, just like Floyd Patterson did. The other way is to kind of turn the elbow up top, and that works better for me with the palm down. And the other one works better with the palm kind of sideways, like facing your opponent. But you could do both. So what Cody does is also like Floyd Patterson is that side to side head movement. What that does is it allows him to get a tighter hook. He already has a very tight hook. If you are facing your opponent, like imagine you're facing your opponent dead on, your nose aligns with his nose, your belly button aligns with his belly button. And obviously the person throwing the tighter hook punch is going to get there first, all things being equal. But what Cody does is he steps slightly, very slightly, to his left or right. So if you imagine you're facing your opponent, you're both throwing just as tight hook punches, but you are throwing with your right and you step to your left. Now your right shoulder is lined up with his nose, and his hook punch is not going to get there as fast, especially, and this is easy to do with the pin to the arm one. You could kind of load it up for like a straighter, more linear strike, and Cody does that kind of too, at times. So you could step to the left a little bit, and now your fist is lined up with their nose, your shoulder and your hip is lined up with his nose. It's a very good power line, I guess, if you want to use Dempsey terminology. And the other guy isn't going to get there as fast. And what you could do is you could actually straighten your arm. So there's a bit less of a curve, but there's more of a straight punch that kind of comes at him with a little bit of a hook on top, and you gain that superior angle. And Cody, if you watch any of his knockout clips, that's almost every time exactly what's happening. Is that side-to-side Frankenstein movement is allowing him to just slip a punch without really even having to tuck his chin or duck down or some at times even keep his guard up. And he's able to get that massively tight angle, and because he whirls his hips around just so fast, it's crazy. It results in knockout punches for him. That being said, he does take a lot of damage, but he does though is he also moves in at the same time. So if we go back to that scenario, you're throwing with your right, your opponent's throwing with his left, and then you step to your left, and that lines up your shoulder and your hand, so you have a tighter angle. And you also step in at the same time. And because you step in towards him, his hook punch is going to be wide. All you boxers out there know that you can step into a hook punch. That's one of the best things you could possibly do to counter it with like something really tight, the shovel hook or whatever the hell you want to do. And that'll kind of dispel the force of it. By step into it, I don't mean step into it, like, drive your head into it. I mean go in so that they're not even their forearm, because that could still do some bad stuff. Rocky Marciano used to hit people with his forearms all the time and wobble them. But if you could get in close enough that it'll kind of wrap around your head, assuming they're not intentionally turning it into like a rabbit punch, then it'll dispel the force. And that's what he does a lot of times too. You'll notice when he does get hit, a lot of times it's on the back of the head, but not at the bad part, kind of, or not like right behind his ear, just kind of like off the top of the dome. and the force is kind of dispelled because it's not being aimed for that, you know. So now that we've gone over that, how does that work for TJ? Well, it's not going to be as bad for him as it was for Dillashaw. It's still going to be very troublesome because what TJ's been doing more and more is he's been trying to stay in the pocket. And his footwork has gotten it got like really fancy, but it was almost like he was relying on it a bit too much. And that was, in the end, that was Cruz's weakness, is that he relied on his footwork too much against Cody, instead of having superior strikes. So it's troublesome for TJ because he likes to go straight in there and stay in the pocket, which is exactly where Cody excels at cutting the tighter angle. But it's not as bad because TJ keeps his guard up. He's very defensively responsible. He has great head movement. He has great instincts, and he's been developing a better and better jab. And he'll double up on it. He'll triple up on it. He'll even throw it like 5 times in a row. And no matter how tight your hook punch is, it's not going to beat a jab. That being said, can Cody eat one of those jabs and then knock him out with a hook punch at the same time? Absolutely. Absolutely he can. He's also... Oh, I forgot to mention that he also has very tight overhands. Kind of like a corkscrew hook kind of looking thing. The same T-Rex arm, same charge forward, taking the inside angle, and then kind of slamming his hand down. So both those weapons can be very bad for TJ. But unlike Cruz, TJ's strikes are much cleaner. They're much more direct. He's better at staying in the pocket. I think we're going to see him get tagged a couple times with some really bad ones if the fight goes on for a long time. But I think even if it doesn't save him eventually, TJ will be saved by being so defensively responsible, by keeping his other hand up as he throws a strike, by knowing all the basics and all that kind of stuff. For Cruz, his strikes are wide and looping, and that's what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about how TJ's footwork is different than Cruz's footwork, because everyone always compares them to each other, and I think wrongly. So Cruz's footwork is much more about putting his feet back together and then stepping out at an angle. So he circles. If you're standing in front of him, you're going to have to look out for a wide circle, and then he's going to kind of drag his hand behind his shoulder or his leg and then clip you, and then use that to get around, to get behind you even more, and kind of go after you. But those punches don't have a lot of his mass behind them. It's mainly the force of his hand being kind of dragged along. There's very little structure. He can't transmit the weight of his body and brace himself when he does those kinds of strikes. So that's his whole thing, is deceptive footwork, kind of nip you, kind of clip at you, and then go away. It's kind of like the Muhammad Ali method of his jab, it's like a flicker jab basically. Circle, 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 boom, and it's like swatting a fly is what Ali said. It's most like just like swat a fly, and it's like a whip, and that's kind of that's always been kind of Cruz's version of that. Although whenever I say something like that about Ali, I want to mention that he did go in for the kill afterwards a lot of time. Unless he was being nice to the guy. He did that too. When he thought the ref should have stopped it by then, he'd just give him like little light taps and then keep calling the ref in, which is awesome. That, not a bad guy. But yeah, the thing is that's Cruz's thing, is that he clips you. And then follows up with that with some harder strikes. He'll follow up with some harder strikes after doing that, but only if he feels it's safe. A lot of times he'll just dart out of the way. And so that worked really, really badly against Cody, because Cody, like I just mentioned, is great at coming in at that tighter angle and stepping into wide looping punches. And what does Cruz mostly use? So he's as far away as possible. He uses wide looping punches and kicks. On the other hand, TJ's footwork is built on a quick angle change to come in a direct line. So he's not just charging in, he's changing angles, so he has a superior one. Then he's coming in a lot of times with very linear strikes and linear movements. And even if they're curved, they're far more up close. They have his body weight behind him. A lot of times they have his whole body weight behind him, which is when I went into the video about how he slips, and he's such a great wrestler, it doesn't matter. Maybe just really wish that Wonderboy Thompson had done some wrestling in high school, that he was further along than he is now. I mean, I know he's going to keep getting better, but if he goes up against a great wrestler, it becomes a boring fight. We've seen that. But that's a whole other podcast to go into. That's a whole other thing, and I think Thompson will get better at that. And I still think he could be champ one day very easily. But I don't know. We'll see. But so yeah, the thing with TJ, he changes angles, linear strike or at least close, defensively responsible, keeps his hands up. And then he'll either go for a takedown or he'll back away, change angles, and then do it again. He'll stay in the pocket while he does this, which is great to do. It's very much like Lomachenko. He attacks in a linear, like straight on a linear fashion. Angle changes, attacks again, changes angle, attacks again, gets the hell out of there. So it's not like Cody's going to be fighting another Cruz. That being said, either one of these guys could very easily get knocked out. I don't want you guys to think that because I made a video on TJ that I think he's going to for sure win the fight, because it's very up in the air right now. I think it's going to be a great fight. I think it's going to come down at times to who has the better chin, which is always a good fight when it comes down to that. I mean, that's debatable, honestly. It could be a really shitty fight. I'll take that back right away. But it can be if both are getting tagged and they both realize, hey, I can get knocked out, but I could still risk a little bit. I could still take some chances. I'm not petrified of my opponent, but I respect their power. Then you start seeing a mix of technique and aggression. That's really great to watch. On the other hand, I could see both these guys ending it, like knocking the other out in like 30 seconds. So I'm not going to try to predict this one. I'm just going to tell you, I think I've already told you where I think is going to be problematic for both fighters. I think it's going to be problematic for Cody because he's used to guys that swing wide, are not defensively responsible with their guard, and he's great at cutting off angles, but he's never faced someone who has changed angles so quickly in such a direct line. Cruz obviously changes angles very quickly. That's his whole thing, like darting back and forth, and then comes in. But he always did so kind of like, just nipping at his opponent in kind of diagonal fashion. Whereas TJ is going to be changing angles, attacking, changing angles, attacking, changing angles, and attacking. Is going to be a whole different ballgame for him. Where it's going to be hard for TJ is those really tight hooks as he tries to come in and being intercepted. So I'm really looking forward to the fight. I hope it goes on for a while. I'm hoping for like a second round knockout on either side. That's pretty much all I'm going to say about that, but I do want to mention that both these guys are not the best trash talkers in the world. I think TJ's better. But I haven't really been... I'm not big into trash talking. I can't do it very well myself. I could say a scathing remark, I guess. But as far as... I can't out-bro someone and stay clever, I guess, like McGregor can, and keep it entertaining and light and everything. But neither of these guys... It's entertaining in the way that they're not really great at it, I guess is what I'm kind of trying to say. It's like... if you've ever seen that movie Dodgeball... And the villain's like, nobody makes me bleed my own blood. Nobody. I feel like it's at times that level of thing. So I'm gonna miss that. It's been funny to watch. I haven't been paying too much attention, but some funny things have been said. Apparently, I just read on Reddit that Cody accidentally implicated alpha male as being steroid users because he was trying to say some shit about TJ. He's like, well, TJ's the one who taught all of us how to do steroids. Which I just read that on Reddit. If that's true, if that's really what he said, like, oh my god, that's right up there with the nobody makes me bleed my own blood thing. But what can I say? Great fighter. I wouldn't want to fight him, Not everyone's great at shit talking, but you know, if you're good at fighting, that's what's important. Um, so that's all I pretty much have to say about that. Moving on to Bisping GSP. Okay, so when it comes to GSP versus Bisping, I think the main deciding factor is if GSP has lost any speed, strength, talent. That's it. That's the main deciding factor for me. If you put George St. Pierre in a ring with Bisping and GSP is like he was before he retired, then he's gonna win, and that's all there is to it. I just consider them on entirely different levels. That being said, I do want to go into um, what Bisping, how he could be troubling to GSP and and some ways that he could win the fight, especially if GSP is slowed down or has ring rust or gets nervous or any of that. Um, so the first thing is Bisping has great lead foot movement. Um, so basically, he's always bouncing his foot up and down, bringing it back, bringing it in, and it kind of acts like a feint. It leaves you kind of unsure when he's coming in. It could mess with GSP's timing a little bit if he's trying to time some takedowns or throw some jabs. I don't see it being like a huge. I don't see it being a huge problem for him, honestly, but it's something that could be. The next thing is that Bisping does have great kicks. They're fast, they're fluid, they have a lot of power behind them. He's a very impressive kicker. And the problem for this with George St. Pierre is that he likes to catch those. He likes to catch kicks that are thrown out. He likes to, and then he likes to take you down and obviously ground and pound. That's the whole name of his game. But I don't think Bispings are going to be very easy to catch. They tend to snap. He withdraws them very quickly. Very fast kicker. But I think the main thing is that while he's been gone, the sport has drastically evolved. I mean, GSP's big thing has always been jab to takedown and reactive takedown. And now people have just gotten so much better about defending against both of those. The jab to takedown has become somewhat predictable. It used to be there was a jab, and then you're like, oh shit, cross is coming. And then guy'd take you down. It's like, whoa, wasn't expecting that. Now it's a 50-50 thing. Guys know that it could just as easily be a takedown. And it's the same with reactive takedowns, really. People kind of expect more and know not to overcommit. They know if they overcommit and they throw like this huge looping cross, that the guy could duck under them and then take them down. So they're keeping their center of balance they're keeping themselves much better balanced. They are training now, I'm assuming. They're training to immediately just kind of sprawl and start grappling if someone charges in when they throw a strike. It's becoming, you've seen it become instinctual. Used to be a huge surprise, like, oh, what do I do now? So the question is, or I guess the second main concern is if the sport has evolved past GSP. Will what he's been using work anymore in this new environment? He needs to look out for knees, big time. If his jab takedown becomes predictable, we've all seen it happen. The guy it's almost like he's switching his stances. You just switch, you do a switch knee and then bam, and then you get them as they charge down. They drive their head down into your knee for you. So that's really what GSP needs to look out for. More than his opponent himself has this sport evolved past him, and I think it has to some extent evolved past his older tricks, what his structure was based on. And if Bisping's picked up on this or not, I don't know. But if he has, then that's bad news. But if GSP's been paying attention, and I'm sure he has, he works with great coaches, and I'm sure his job's been getting even better. He's still been working with Roach all this time. Then that's a minor consideration if he knows how to deal with that. And maybe we could see some new tricks with him. Maybe he's gotten even better. I don't know. But I think the main thing is, what if he's slowed down? What if he gets out there and Bisping's still fast and still strong and still sharp, and GSP just isn't anymore? and he gets knocked out in the first round just because he's not up to that level anymore. I don't see that happening. That could happen, and then it just be another example of a pro coming back and not realizing how much they've lost. On the other hand, it could be totally opposite. He could come in and dominate, and we could be like, wow, these guys have really been standing still in this weight division, and not much has really happened with it. But we'll see. That's about as much thought as I'm giving it, because I think those two aspects of it are more important than any kind of technical aspect in this particular fight. I just consider GSP to be on that level, or at least he used to be. So I want to see if he still is. Could just be like 5 rounds of ground and pound, or it could be a knockout on either side. I'm predicting 5 rounds of ground and pound. It's either GSP well, we all know the terminology. I don't want to get all my videos demonetized because they have these things where you could, but if he chooses to wrestle, make love to him for 5 rounds, and he's able to do that successfully and not get tagged, it'll be easy for him. But if Bisping manages to take advantage of an older, slower George St. Pierre, and he's managed to stay in the same amount of shape, obviously, enough to remain champion, and that's a whole other bag of worms, but, hands down, he is still champion, then he's going to have an easy time of it. So it's really just about seeing what kind of shape GSP's in. So I'm sorry if you wanted more from that. That's all I really have to say about that fight, because I think those are the two determining factors. So moving on to the last thing is I have been watching, mainly based on your guys' suggestion, Ippo. And I'm not even going to try to say the entire name of it correctly. I think it's Hajime no Ippo. It's really bad I don't know the name of it, because I've watched every I haven't read the manga. I've watched every episode. Sadly, only the first one was dubbed, and then after that, it was, you have to like pay close attention so you don't miss any of the subs. But you guys have been wanting me to recommend it forever, especially since I made the video on the Dempsey roll, and I knew the Dempsey roll was a big part of that anime because I have anime friends. I only ever really liked Cowboy Bebop and Samurai Champloo from the same guy. I've always had a dislike for certain. I guess most of the anime I was exposed to just had that annoying humor. You know the humor I'm talking about, where one person says something is supposed to be socially embarrassing, and then the guy's mouth gets 5 times too big, and he dances around looking stupid. And it just looked like when a 5-year-old tries to be funny to me, and I hate that kind of. And I wrongly associated all anime with that. So, which I guess was my closed-mindedness, but you have to admit I'm right. I'm right about a good deal of it in that regard. But glad to say that Ippo isn't that way, and when it does get that way at times, it's mostly funny, because it's just it's a group of guys being jerks to each other. That's pretty universal. It's not overdoing it. I haven't seen a lot of there's something called harem mentality. My wife has been getting me into more and more anime, and along with the cringy humor, the second thing I can't stand is the dude who's surrounded by beautiful women, and he's either oblivious or too shy to go after any of them. And it just kills me inside. I don't know if that's what it's supposed to be. I think you're supposed to be laughing at him, or I think it's supposed to be humorous. But to me, it just makes me sad. I'm like, dude, you have 10 or more beautiful women after you, and you're either too oblivious to realize it, or too much of a coward, and it just hurts me inside. So I can't deal with that. It annoys me too much. I start yelling at it, like, she wants you, man. Go for it. What are you thinking? Yeah. So maybe I get too involved in TV shows or whatever, but I can't distance myself enough. But Ippo, aside from not having too much of that stuff that I hate, has so much great stuff I love in a TV show. And beyond having so much great stuff I love in a TV show, it has a lot of slightly exaggerated but very accurate knowledge about boxing, which I was not expecting it. It toes this line between realistic attributes, and at the same time making it just kind of fantastic enough, or fantasy enough, to where it's it still feels like you're watching like some kind of supernatural thing. So like sometimes it'll be funny, but most of the times it's cool. Their interpretation of the flicker jab is funny. It doesn't look cool to me. They literally make the guy's arm look like a noodle, and it's just this, and it's kind of going through the air, and it's like more humorous than anything. But their interpretation of other kinds of strikes, and I knew about the Dempsey roll, and I watched Ippo before I did the Dempsey roll, like I said, because I've had a lot of friends talk about it, and I don't know if Ippo made up that term. Dempsey himself called it a double shift or something like that. It's in his book. He describes it. He says the guy who did it, whose name I forget, who he learned it from. He said you could do it as a hook, as it like a double shifting hook, and then he describes how to actually do it in his book. It's a technique he legitimately moved. We don't have much footage of it, especially I think we have like 5 fights of his or something like that that were actually recorded. But you could still see people do it to this day, especially in UFC and MMA, that people are blitzing all the time, and some of them combine it with like that weaving motion. Yeah, you still see it. So I knew about that, and I watched an episode on that, but I did not know how many different movements, from signature movements from fighters through the past that that the creator, and I should have been more prepared and had these names here for you guys. I'm sorry about that, but the creator, whoever he is, really knows his stuff. And like I think his name's Ruddock. He was heavyweight around the same time as Mike Tyson. He was good. I watched a few of his fights, but he had something called the smash, and they put that into the anime and made it look very similar. Same thing with the gazelle punch. Trying to think. Same thing with flicker jabs. And they even talked about Hearns and mentioned him when they mentioned the flicker jabs. So it's all fantastical. It's but it's at the same time, it has enough realism, and the solutions. What I really like is the solutions are real enough. When Ippo, and I hope I'm saying that name correctly, but when he actually is struggling for a long time and can't figure out an opponent, the solutions he comes up with a lot of the time are really realistic and could work. And then half the time, it is still an anime, so half the time the solutions are like, I have to keep fighting because my friends are counting on me, or if I just keep trying, that always ticks me off. And that's another. I guess I have a lot of pet peeves against anime that I didn't know about. I don't know. I'm an opinionated guy, so in case you can't tell, but that always ticks me off too. It's like, no, that's not what happens. All the fighters who got knocked out tried their hardest. It wasn't because they didn't have friends that didn't believe in them, or it's not because they weren't trying to get up. It's because the nerve impulses to their brain got shut off, and no amount of your friends believing in you is going to help that. But and there's a good deal of that, but it's coupled enough with the actual techniques and strategies that I don't mind it. Second time I mentioned him this podcast, but Marciano fought with like his nose split in half for a whole round, and did not stop continuously punching for like 2 minutes. So yeah, people can do that. It takes a whole other kind of crazy. It takes a whole other kind of burning fire to never lose like that, and keep going and sacrifice your body and just have that drive. And it is possible, but it's brought up a little much. But as far as what I love the group dynamic. I love how it educates you about boxing and goes into boxing history as you're preparing for the fights. The characters are 3-dimensional and really great. Even the ones that start off as 2-dimensional. Sorry if I'm saying this name wrong yet again, but Takamura is definitely one of my favorite characters of all time. And it doesn't sugarcoat competitive fighting at all. Like, this guy Takamura is literally before a fight, before a weigh-in, he's heaving like in pain, like his body's cramping up, his stomach's trying to like throw up something that's not there because he hasn't eaten. His lips are crusted over because he can't make weight, and he's trying to. It's funny to me that this anime has inspired people to be boxers. I keep hearing that because it really does not sugarcoat the downside of competitive fighting. Um, I seriously considered when I was a young man going into competitive fighting, and I chose not to for a lot of the reasons I've listed. Um, you know, uh, uh, just so much sacrifice, um, possible brain damage, lots of scars, messed up ears, all that kind of stuff. I respect the hell out of people that do. Um, Also, I think I mentioned this before that I was really dumb when I was young and I got into a lot of fights. Many that were not my own fault, I'm happy to say. But I felt confident as a young man that, like, I've knocked people out. And so I felt confident that I could handle myself. And I didn't feel I really needed to prove anything at that point. Uh, Now, I don't know. Yeah, sorry, I this kind of turned into a little therapy session. I didn't mean it to for like a minute, but now I kind of do wish that I'd competed a little bit, but for a whole other reason. At that point in my life, at that time, I thought, okay, here are my reasons I could compete, and none of them make sense to me. I don't need them. Looking back on it, I as an older man, as a 30-year-old man, I have a different take on it. I wish I had gone back. But for a different reason, and I can't compare myself then to compare myself now. I'll just end up driving myself insane, Different person at that time. But regardless of that, those are the kinds of things that this anime makes you think about. It makes you think about, well, would I want to be a fighter? What would be my motivation? What are these characters' motivations? It goes into. I like that it goes into the motivations of the competitors too. It shows their life, and it shows that a lot of times these guys work just as hard, and their dream even bigger, and it's for an even more important cause. And a lot of times they just don't cut it due to lack of natural talent or proper training or circumstances. They just don't cut it. It's very realistic in that regard too. It's just as good a drama as it is a good fighting anime, as it is a good action show. It's just as good on an emotional level. It's made me laugh out loud several times, especially with the bear. Just the amount of ridiculousness that in most animes would really tick me off because it fit the character. And you know what I'm talking about if you've seen it. It fit the character. Once again, it exaggerated reality, but I could, obviously you could never do that in real life, but in that world, I felt it worked, and it was absolutely hilarious when he was eating the bear later and realized it was the same bear. And his response was just to cry and be like, "We need to eat the whole thing and respect it." That's definitely one of the funniest moments in any TV show. So, even if you don't like anime a lot, which I don't know, I guess I used to say I didn't, but I found it. I'll say I don't like the majority of it, but I'll say about any TV show. I don't like stereotypical anime that I've been shown by people most of my life who I didn't understand, who were we were on different wavelengths or whatever. But I like this one. This is really good. I'll recommend this one. I'll recommend Attack on Titan. I'll recommend Cowboy Bebop. I'll recommend Samurai Champloo. And I'm trying to think if there's any more because my wife showed me a bunch of them. I don't know. Recommend me some in the comments if you've made it this long through the podcast. Recommend some to me and that you like that aren't too ridiculous and that are fun to watch and that don't have the annoying the bad comedy, I guess, and that don't have the harem thing that annoys me so much. But yeah, those are what I would recommend. I know those are all pretty mainstream, but what can I say? Those are the ones I've liked so far. So yeah, I think that's it for this podcast. Check out my book if you haven't. There's a half-hour video, half hours of videos that come with it. I've been getting great reviews so far. Leave me comments or email me about if anything was unclear. If you'd like to see anything kind of added on for the next week or two, I'm going to be gathering comments on it. Super easy for me to modify the PDF file and to modify the movie still. So I'm gonna just leave that open for 1 or 2 weeks. Let me know what you guys would like to see explained a little bit better or more in depth, or something that didn't make sense to you, and I'll be happy to kind of alter that and make sure that that's clear. I'd actually really appreciate that too. And yeah, I can't wait for the fights tomorrow. Hope you guys are having an awesome day. Thank you so much for listening, and happy training.